Comprehensive cross-platform coverage of the U.S. market close starts right now.
And right now, we are 2 minutes away from the end of the trading day. Romaine Bostick alongside Scarlett Fu. We're counting you down to the closing bell. Here to help take us beyond the bell. It's a global simulcast with our friends Tim Stenovic and a distracted Carol Masser. Welcome to our audiences across our Bloomberg platforms, television, radio.
The OpenAI news, that's all. Trying to keep you informed, kiddo.
Originals and our partnership with those folks, Carol Masser, yes, still streaming on YouTube.
Romaine never misses a beat. Gotta love it. Interesting rally today. We're just rolling over our highs of the session. I know, like you guys, we too have been all in on this OpenAI story. We just had a great guest.
Mark Benioff?
No, I know, right? Don't you think about that? I think about
Mark
Google
Benioff?
saying,
No,
Mark
no.
Benioff, they're all saying, hey, do you want to come work for me?
Yeah, I mean, this is talent in what is arguably the hottest sector of tech right now. Of course, you're going to try to poach those folks.
Exactly. So that'll be interesting to watch those headlines. I want to mention that Greg Halter, he's over at Carnegie Investment Council. They've got about $4 billion in assets under management. He's like, we're not quite sure how this story is ultimately going to end. Who's going to be the leaders and kind of setting the modes when it comes to generative AI? But what he's thinking about is companies like Stryker, who are going to be using AI in the future when it comes to replacement medical devices, HIPs, Eaton, which is all about electrical products, right? They're going to be the backbone in terms of data infrastructure. Or Accenture, that's hitting a 52-week high today. This is a company that others are going to be tapping into, right, Tim, when it comes to what do I do with AI? What do I need to do with AI?
Yeah, speaking of those companies, we spoke to Crawford Del Pret over at IDC earlier in our program, who told us all about AI. The future of tech is at stake here, likening it, Romaine, to what happened in the early parts of the dot-com boom and the winners and losers who were separated there.
Yeah, absolutely. Here, let's walk through the numbers here as we get the closing bell here in New York City with the Dow Jones Industrial Average and all of the major indices posting gains on the day to start the holiday shortened week. The Dow up 200 points or about 0.6%. The S&P coming off 3 straight weeks of gains, looking to extend it to a fourth, higher by 33 points, back around 45 and change. Up about 0.7%. The NASDAQ composite up about 159 points or more than 1% on the day. And the Russell 2000, while it is the relative laggard, still posting a pretty decent gain on the day of 0.5%.
Hey, one thing I want to mention, an outperformer, those Chinese names that trade in the United States, the NASDAQ Golden Dragon, China index up about 3.5%. We did have Scarlett, China pausing rate cuts. They're going to shift to credit stability in that country. So we did see a rally and a move once again into those names.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a throwback there, Carol Masser.
I know.
She's not going to forget about those.
No, never. I know she always has her eyes on those. Let's take a look at the group movers here. Not a whole lot of drama on such an up day. You have 24 industry groups and all but 2 finishing higher. And of course, the leaders here are software, and that's basically Microsoft. You also have semiconductors. NVIDIA, of course, will be reporting tomorrow. Telecom gaining 1.2%. On the downside, 2 groups in the red: household and personal products and utilities. These are classic defensive sectors. You could see them finishing down by at least 1/3 of 1% each.
All right, folks, let's get to some of the individual gainers. Got to do, of course, Microsoft today. Just finishing off its highs of the session, still about a 2% gain and hitting a fresh all-time high, I think closing at an all-time high as well today. Had to do, all the turmoil following OpenAI, Sam Altman out, Microsoft ultimately doing kind of its own coup and saying, hey, Altman, come on over. He's one of the co-founders along with Greg Brockman to lead a newly formed in-house AI research unit at Microsoft. So Microsoft in the thick of this, big investment, as everybody knows, earlier this year in OpenAI. So that name finishing up about 2% on the day, really helping provide some support there in the NASDAQ on this Monday. Also, interestingly enough, solar stocks rallying in a big way. They've had a brutal earnings season, but nonetheless, investors are giving it some love. If you look at the Invesco Solar ETF, it was up about 3% in today's session, still down almost 40% year to date. Enphase specifically, it was the number 2 gainer in the S&P 500, number 1 gainer in the NASDAQ 100, and that one is up just about, we're going to pull up the board for you, I think, on Enphase. There we go, up about 6% in today's session. The president and CEO of the company buying about $100,000 worth of shares, according to the SEC. And also some analysts weighing on the company, expecting the next few quarters to remain weak. They talk about an inventory destocking process is completed, but they do say positive signs for the stock are materializing as investors look for the bottom. One more in terms of the renewable energy phase. Renew Energy is about a $2.5 billion market cap company. Wind, solar, hydro. in India. Basically, that's where all their clients are. And that one was an outperformer, up about 8.6%. It's an ADR. It's up about 18% year to date, guys.
All right. Well, not easy to find notable decliners with today's widespread market move higher, but I want to start with Bristol Myers Squibb, among the worst performers on a percentage basis in the S&P 500, down more than 3.8%, sinking after Bayer stopped a trial of a competing drug. The Bayer news is that it stopped a late-stage study of a drug for lack of efficiency, or efficacy, I should say. And analysts said that could cause Bristol to dip because of its development drug of milvexian. Also, speaking of AI, C3 AI shares falling today. This after investors learned that the company cut workers last week. That news just coming out today, citing employee performance and the need for cost savings. Shares were up more than 8% before news of the job cuts. Shares fell today 4.3%. Bloomberg News reported that employees were fired across departments, according to people familiar with the matter. The stock up about 150% so far this year. And then NRG Energy Inc. Announced that it's replacing its CEO following a dispute over the company's $2.8 billion acquisition of Vivint Smart Home. NRG Energy named Chair Lawrence Coben as interim president and CEO as the company begins a search, Romaine, for a permanent CEO of the
I've
company.
always felt that name was weird. It's NRG Energy.
I know. Couldn't they just let it be NRG?
Yeah,
Energy?
exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I agree.
I
Okay,
Take
we're
it
not
easy,
the only
guys,
ones.
kids.
Maybe that's why Elliot is involved. Anyway, let's check in on what's going on in the bond market here. It was kind of a flip-flop day in treasuries. It started off here, and it looked like we were actually starting to see a pretty significant sell-off earlier in the session here. But that flipped largely on the back of that 20-year auction at about 1 p.m. New York time. And I guess you can call this a resumption of the rally. Saved the 2-year, most of the activity on the longer end of the curve, with the 10-year yield lower by just about a basis point or two, the 20 and 30-year lower by about 3 basis points.
I've always been intrigued by the 20-year. I mean, because the yield is so much higher than everything else, and it was revived not so long ago by the Treasuries. There's not a lot out there.
I wonder too, because I mean, it's so many. It's funny. There's so many people who actually say pay more attention to the 20-year. Obviously, it doesn't have the volume that you have on the 10-year, or even on the 2-year here. But a lot of people are saying you get a little bit better read on investor sentiment on the 20-year, and for that matter, on the 5-year than you do on the 2 and the 10.
So what do you think investors are really kind of focusing? Obviously, today we're all over OpenAI. I just see actually some tech earnings.
That's what
still
we're
reporting.
focusing on.
Yeah, well, Zoom is actually just reporting earnings.
Man, they look pretty good, Carol Massar. You want me to read them for you?
Yeah.
3Q numbers coming out right now as we cross the wire. Adjusted EPS at $1.29, Carol Massar. The street was looking for $1.10. That would be a beat. Revenue for the quarter also coming in pretty above estimates. 1.14 billion. The street was looking for 1.2. And here's your forecast.
Yeah.
On a full year basis, revenue 4.51 billion to 4.51 billion is a range they given, and they previously saw 4.49 to 4.5, so a little bit of a nudge higher on.
So we're
the
still
outlook.
zooming around, right? We're still doing making use of it. 7% higher here, Scarlett, in the aftermarket.
Yeah, a big question for Zoom, of course, is what happens when small businesses faced with higher rates and faced with slowing demand, are they going to continue to pay for this service? Because obviously relying on you and me to Zoom our friends does not bring in any kind of revenue for the company.
No, we're doing the free meetings and hanging out in person too. Go ahead, Romaine.
Well, I mean, this has been a big topic of conversation because, I mean, Scarlett's point, I mean, at some point, people are going to take a look at these costs, but there's also sort of what's the alternative, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
well, there are alternatives.
FaceTime.
Good alternatives?
Yeah, Microsoft Teams is a big one. What?
you
It's
laugh?
huge.
Microsoft Teams?
Absolutely, yeah.
Part of the Office bundle.
Exactly, and that's the reason, because Microsoft has this relationship with so many Fortune
the last time
500
you used
companies. All they got to do is flip
Well,
a switch, and you're using Microsoft Teams.
Can I just say, since we're so focused on AI today, in their press release, they're talking about their all-in-one intelligent collaboration platform with advanced new capabilities like Zoom AI Companion and continuing to evolve our customer and employee engagement solutions. We're also pleased with, they're talking about AI capabilities. So usage of our new AI capabilities, enhancing the value of our platform. What's interesting is I start to think if there are cost pressures on companies, if we fall into some kind of recession perhaps last year, do companies start to think, well, wait a minute, working from home, not so bad. I don't need as much office space.
Yeah.
I can kind of, let's go back to Zooming. I don't know. I'm just putting it out.
If you have real estate commitments, you're not going back to Zooming. You're forcing everyone to come in.
Make them come in. But it is a good point, though. I mean, if in a hybrid work environment where you have different companies with certainly different priorities, and different rules around it. But a lot of them have 3 to 4 off days in the office, maybe 1 day a week where everybody comes in. The other days where it's hybrid, people are joining even from the same offices.
Yeah.
They're joining on these video conference software, and that's not going to go away if you have a return to office.
All right, guys. That's it for Monday. We'll see what tomorrow brings and whether or not there's more OpenAI headlines. So we will certainly be following it. All right, that's a wrap. Our cross-platform coverage, radio, TV, YouTube, and of course, Bloomberg Originals. We will see you tomorrow, everybody.